What if I told you there's a house so cursed, even seasoned ghost hunters refuse to step inside after sunset? A place where doors slam on their own, clocks stop at the same exact minute every night, and guests leave with bruises they can't explain. This isn't an urban legend or a Halloween gimmick. This house exists. Hidden deep in the American countryside, it's earned a reputation that's terrified locals for nearly a century. We didn't just visit it. We slept there. From the moment we crossed the gate, strange things began to happen. Cold spots that moved like breathing, whispers that seemed to call our names, and cameras dying one by one. But what we caught on film that night, that's what none of us were ready for. Chapter 1. The legend begins. Every town has that one story parents whisper to keep their kids from wandering too far after dark. In this one, that story leads to a crumbling farmhouse tucked deep in the woods of rural Connecticut, known to locals simply as the Mercer House. It's been standing for more than 100 years, though standing might be generous. Its windows are boarded, its porch sinks into the earth, and the air around it feels unnaturally heavy, like the place is breathing slow, shallow breaths. They say the Mercer family vanished one winter night in 1922. No bodies, no footprints in the snow, just dinner still on the table and a single chair knocked over near the fireplace. The sheriff who led the search quit a week later and left town for good. Over the decades, new owners tried to fix it up, but every attempt ended the same way. Strange accidents, missing pets, neighbors hearing screams when the house was empty. One man swore he saw figures in the windows while mowing the lawn next door, even though the house had no electricity. By the 1980s, no one dared live there. Locals claimed the curse grew stronger with every year it sat empty. And that's exactly the house we decided to spend night in. Chapter 2. The warnings. Before we ever set foot near the Mercer house, the locals made sure we knew what we were getting into. At a diner 5 miles from the property, our producer asked the waitress if she'd heard of it. She froze mid-pour, eyes fixed on the window. "You're not going there, are you?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. When we nodded, she just said, "Don't stay past midnight." That was the first warning, but not the last. A retired deputy told us he'd once responded to a noise complaint there. "Whole place was dark," he said, "but I could swear I saw someone standing in the upstairs window." He never filed the report. An older man outside the hardware store pulled one of us aside and muttered, "If you hear the piano, leave. Don't wait to see who's playing it." By the time we reached the dirt road leading to the property, even the GPS refused to load. The air grew thick, the trees pressed closer, and cell service dropped completely. Every story, every look of fear, it all built the same message. Something's wrong with that house. And yet we kept driving. Because sometimes curiosity is stronger than fear, even when it shouldn't be. Chapter 3. Arrival at dusk. The road to the Mercer house turned from gravel to dirt, then from dirt to little more than a trail swallowed by trees. The GPS gave up long before we saw it, but the house didn't need an introduction. It just appeared. At first, it looked like a silhouette in the fading light, sharp rooflines cutting against a bruised orange sky. Then, as we got closer, the details emerged. Rotting porch boards, ivy strangling the chimney, and windows that reflected no light at all. Even the air changed. The late summer hum of crickets faded into silence, replaced by the faint groan of the wind pushing through hollow boards. One of our cameramen, Kyle, whispered, "It feels like it's waiting for us." None of us disagreed. We parked a few yards away and stepped out, our boots sinking into soft, damp soil. The house loomed ahead, larger than it looked in photos, darker too. Every instinct screamed to turn back. But then the front door creaked open on its own, slow and deliberate, as if inviting us inside. We hadn't touched a thing. The sun dipped below the trees. Shadows poured across the yard. And just like that, the night began. Chapter 4. Crossing the Threshold. The first step inside was like stepping into another world, a world that hadn't moved since the day the Mercers vanished. Dust hung thick in the air, floating through the beam of our flashlights like ash. Every board creaked, every sound echoed longer than it should have. The air was cold, unnaturally so. You could feel it cling to your skin, heavy and still, like the house itself was holding its breath. To the right, an old piano sat in the corner, keys yellowed and cracked. One of our audio techs joked about the local legend, "If you hear the piano," but his laugh trailed off fast. None of us wanted to finish that sentence out loud. The living room was filled with relics of another time. A clock frozen at 11:59, family photos faded almost to nothing, and a teacup still sitting beside a mold-covered chair. It was like the Mercers had stood up mid-supper and never come back. Then came the smell, a faint sweetness beneath the rot, like old perfume or burnt sugar. It moved with us, room to room, as though something unseen was following close behind. That's when one of the cameras flickered, the red record light blinking once before dying. We'd only been inside for 5 minutes, and already the house had taken its first piece of us. Chapter 5, The Setup. The first thing you do in a haunted house isn't scream, it's set up gear. Cameras, motion sensors, thermal scanners, and EVP recorders, all carefully placed to catch anything we might miss with the naked eye. We started in the main hallway, mounting night vision cameras to face every entry point. The idea was simple. If anything moved, we'd see it. But the air felt charged, like static before a storm, and even the equipment seemed to react. One recorder shut off the moment we turned it on. Another began picking up faint white noise, even though no one was speaking. It almost sounded like humming. Kyle set up a thermal camera near the staircase. The temperature hovered around 68 degrees, normal, until he pointed it toward the piano. The screen dropped to 49. "Cold spot," he whispered, staring at the blue patch forming in the shape of a handprint on the keys. None of us touched it. In the kitchen, the clock on the wall, the same kind as the one in the living room, ticked for exactly 5 seconds before stopping at 11:59. Again, we tried to laugh it off, pretend it was just nerves. But every sound, every flicker of shadow made it clear. The house was watching us back. Chapter 6, The First Signs. For the first hour, nothing happened. Just the steady hum of equipment, the soft shuffle of our footsteps, and that uneasy silence pressing in from every wall. It was almost enough to make us believe maybe the legends were wrong. Almost. Then from upstairs came a sound, faint but distinct. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and heavy, moving from one end of the hallway to the other. We froze. Every camera turned toward the ceiling. Kyle whispered, "Is someone up there?" But we all knew no one was. The only door upstairs was still sealed with police tape from decades ago. A motion sensor beeped once, then again. Lights flashed red on our monitor. Something was moving. We rushed toward the stairs, cameras rolling, hearts pounding. The temperature dropped so suddenly that we could see our breath. And then, a whisper, right between us, so soft it barely registered on the audio. "Get out." Every flashlight flickered. For a second, all the noise in the house stopped completely. Then the piano downstairs let out a single, trembling note. One key. Just one. That was all it took. We weren't alone anymore. Chapter 7, The Mirror Room. It was Kyle who found it first. A narrow hallway hidden behind a warped door on the second floor. The air inside was colder than anywhere else in the house, almost sharp. Our flashlights swept across cracked wallpaper and dust until they caught a glint of glass. An entire wall covered in mirrors. Some full length, some broken, all tilted at odd angles. Locals called it the mirror room. We set up a camera facing the largest one, an antique framed in tarnished silver. Its surface was foggy, smeared as if someone had recently touched it. "Let's test for reflections," our producer said, stepping into view. But when she waved, her reflection didn't move in sync. It was delayed, just a fraction of a second, but enough to make everyone's stomach drop. The camera caught it, too. A stutter, like the reflection was thinking. We tried to rationalize it. Bad signal, lag, maybe dust on the lens. But when we replayed the footage, there was something else in the mirror. A figure standing behind her. No one was there in real life. And just before the camera shut off, words appeared in the dust on the glass. Faint, as if written from the inside. Chapter 8, The Basement. The door to the basement was wedged behind an old cabinet, as if someone had tried to block it off. The handle was rusted, the hinges fused with age. When we finally forced it open, the smell hit first, damp earth and something faintly metallic like rust and rain mixed with rot. The staircase descended into darkness. Our flashlights barely cut through the thick air. Each step creaked louder than the last, the kind of sound that makes your chest tighten because you're not sure if it's the wood or something else moving below. Halfway down, we found scratch marks along the wall. Long, uneven, deep. Not from animals. Too high. Too human. The basement itself was low and sprawling, lined with shelves of glass jars filled with murky liquid. Whatever was inside had long decayed into shapeless shadows. The air was colder here, our breath visible even as the thermals glitched again and again. Then came the thud. A single, heavy knock from the far corner. We swung our lights toward it. Nothing. Just a collapsed beam and a rotted chair. But when Kyle replayed the camera feed, there was a figure crouched behind that chair. Pale. Motionless. Gone when the lights turned on. That was the moment everyone realized. The Mercer house wasn't just haunted. It was alive. Chapter 9. The Whisper Recordings. After the basement encounter, we returned upstairs and started checking the audio logs. It was standard procedure. Review, tag, move on. But that night, nothing about the playback felt standard. The first few clips were silent except for static and the occasional groan of the floorboards. Then, about an hour in, one of the EVP recorders, the one we'd left near the piano, picked up something new. A whisper. Soft, rhythmic, almost like humming at first. Then clearer. Don't look. We froze. Every recorder, even the backups, had caught the same thing. The same words, the same voice. But what chilled us most wasn't what it said. It was how close it sounded. When we boosted the audio, the waveform spiked as if the whisper had been recorded directly into the microphone. Problem was, no one had been near it for hours. As the recording played, another sound bled through, faint piano keys in the background. The same single note from earlier struck again and again. Kyle tried to joke to lighten the air. Guess they're just musical ghosts. But his laugh faltered when a different voice overlapped the recording, this one lower, closer, almost a growl. Leave. Now. The audio cut to silence. And the piano downstairs began to play. Chapter 10. The piano that played itself. The sound came from the parlor, soft, hesitant at first, like someone pressing the keys with care. We stood frozen in the hallway, flashlights trembling, as the faint melody echoed through the dark. No one was near the piano. We could see that from where we stood. But the notes kept coming, uneven, broken, and somehow familiar. It wasn't a random tune. It was a lullaby. Kyle recognized it first. That's the song from the music box upstairs, he whispered. He was right. The same melody that had played on repeat when we tested the old music box earlier. Only this time, it was slower, sadder. We moved closer, the air heavy with that sweet, decaying perfume we'd smelled before. The camera picked up the movement of the keys, pressing down one by one, though the bench was completely empty. Then, in an instant, the song stopped. Silence. And just as we exhaled, every single key slammed down at once, the sound exploding through the house like a thunderclap. The power flickered. A picture frame fell from the wall. We bolted back, hearts pounding, the echoes still vibrating through the floorboards. The piano lid creaked open on its own, revealing nothing inside but darkness. That was when we realized this house didn't just replay memories. It remembered the dead. Chapter 11. The Candlelight Test. After the piano incident, we needed to regain control, or at least the illusion of it. So we set up what ghost hunters call a candlelight test. The idea is simple. Place a single candle in the center of a room, seal off all drafts, and ask questions. If the flame reacts, you've got company. We chose the dining room. It felt safer, larger, open, less claustrophobic. We arranged our chairs in a circle around the flickering candle. The house was silent, the air so still that the flames stood perfectly straight. Our producer began. If anyone is here with us, can you show us a sign? For 10 seconds, nothing. Then the flame dipped just slightly. Kyle grinned nervously. That could have been air pressure. But when he asked, "Can you do that again?" the flames snuffed out completely. The room plunged into darkness. And then, faintly, a woman's voice whispered from the far end of the table. "Why are you here?" Flashlights scrambled to life, beams slicing through the black. No one was there, but the chairs around the table, the ones we hadn't touched, were no longer evenly spaced. Two had shifted closer together, as though someone had just joined us. Chapter 12. The Portrait in the Hall. The hall, just beyond the dining room, was lined with old portraits, stiff, formal faces from another century. Most were faded beyond recognition. But one, right in the center, looked almost new. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing a dark dress and a locket that glinted faintly even under layers of dust. Her eyes were striking, not painted in the flat, dull way of old portraits, but sharp, almost alive. We shined our lights on the plaque beneath it. The name read, Eliza Mercer, the matriarch of the family, the one, according to legend, who'd never left. As we filmed, something strange happened. The reflection in the glass shifted, just slightly. From one angle, her eyes looked to the left, then as we moved, they followed us. At first, we thought it was just the angle, a trick of the light. But when Kyle stepped closer, the locket in the painting seemed to catch a new glimmer, even though there was no light source nearby. He raised his hand to adjust the frame. That's when the glass cracked. A single line split the portrait from top to bottom, right through Eliza's face. And behind the glass, in the faint reflection, we saw it, a shadow standing just over his shoulder. But when we turned, no one was there. Chapter 13. The locked door upstairs. At the top of the staircase, there was one door different from all the others. Heavier, darker, its paint peeled in jagged strips. A length of brittle police tape still clung across the handle, faded to yellow-white with age. This was the room. The one the sheriff's report had marked unentered due to structural risk. The one every local said to leave sealed. Naturally, that's where we went next. The doorknob was cold to the touch, colder than metal should ever be. Kyle pressed his ear against it. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. We all leaned closer. A faint rhythmic sound came through like breathing. We checked the thermal camera. The screen flickered, then went black. Against better judgment, we pried the latch open. The door resisted at first, then swung inward with a groan that rattled through the whole house. Inside was darkness, not just absence of light. Something thicker, almost tangible. Dust floated like ash in our flashlight beams. A child's bed sat in the corner, untouched but sunken with age. On the wall above it, carved deep into the wood, were 3 words. She never left. A small, cracked locket lay on the pillow, identical to the one in Eliza Mercer's portrait. And when we picked it up, we heard it, a soft, rasping whisper from behind the door. "Put it back." Chapter 14. The Locket. The locket was small, no bigger than a coin, its silver tarnished black with age. The hinge creaked when we opened it. Inside, a faded photo of a little girl on one side, and on the other a lock of hair. It wasn't dusted, it wasn't decayed, it looked fresh. Our producer whispered, "Eliza Mercer had a daughter, didn't she?" According to the old police records, she did, a child named Annabelle. The same child who vanished the night the family disappeared. No remains, no trace, nothing but rumor. Some said Eliza had gone mad after her daughter's death. Others claimed the girl was still in the house, waiting. As we examined the locket, our EMF reader spiked, from near zero to maximum in seconds. The temperature dropped again, the same icy wave that always came before something moved. Then from the hallway outside came a faint creak, the unmistakable sound of small, bare feet on wood. The camera panned toward the door. There was nothing there, just the locket swinging slowly in Kyle's hand, until it suddenly snapped shut on its own, the clasp clicking like a heartbeat. We didn't realize it then, but taking that locket changed everything. Because from that moment on, the house stopped being a location. It became aware of us. Chapter 15. Voices through the static. Later that night, we gathered in the parlor to review our live feeds. Every camera, every mic was recording, though by now, we'd learned that didn't always mean they'd stay recording. Kyle noticed it first. On the screen showing the hallway outside the locked room, a faint distortion rippled through the frame, like static crawling across an old TV. At the same time, our walkie-talkies, even the ones turned off, began to hiss. Interference, we thought. But then the static shifted. It wasn't random. It was speaking. At first, the words were buried in the noise, low, garbled, almost mechanical. Then clearer. You took it. The room went silent. We looked at the locket on the table, still closed tight. Kyle leaned forward to respond, voice trembling. Who are you? The static deepened, rising to a shrill whine. The voice came again, closer, almost right beside the microphone. She's mine. Every screen blinked to black, all except one. The upstairs hallway camera. There, standing at the edge of the frame, was the faint outline of a girl. Still, watching. Her face was hidden, but her head tilted, once sharply, as if she could see us watching back. Then the feed cut. Chapter 16, The Shadow in the Hallway. We'd barely processed what we'd seen on the monitor when the sound came again. Soft footsteps, moving just above us. Slow, careful, deliberate. Kyle grabbed his flashlight, muttering, "It's just the floor settling." But we all knew it wasn't. The steps weren't random. They were pacing. Back and forth, back and forth. We followed the noise to the base of the stairs. The lights from our headlamps sliced through the dark, but the hallway above looked swallowed, as if light itself refused to touch it. That's when we saw it. At the far end of the hall, silhouetted in the faint gray glow from a window, something moved. Not a full figure, more like a shape that wasn't quite there. It shifted, swaying, then froze when we whispered. We thought it was a trick of the light, until it started walking toward us. No sound, no footsteps, just movement. Smooth, gliding wrong. We stumbled back, flashlights shaking. The beam caught a glimpse, a tall shadow, featureless, except for where the eyes should have been. Two empty voids. Kyle shouted, "Who's there?" And the air cracked with a sound like static, loud and sharp. The cameras flickered. The hallway went dark. When the lights came back, the shadow was gone. But in the dust on the wall behind us, someone had traced 3 words with a fingertip. Too late now. Chapter 17, The Disappearing Footage. Back in the living room, the team scrambled to check the recordings. After everything we'd seen, we needed proof, something we could show. But when Kyle connected the first memory card to his laptop, the files wouldn't open. Error messages. Corrupted data. Every video from the last hour gone. We tried the second card. Same thing. Third. Same. The only clips that still played were from before we found a locket. Everything after that point had either frozen, glitched into white noise, or been completely erased. Then, one file unexpectedly loaded. A few seconds of grainy footage from the hallway, shaky dark. At first, it looked empty. Then, faintly, the image of a woman appeared in the reflection of a picture frame on the wall. Her face was pale, blurred, and her lips were moving. Kyle leaned in, rewinding, trying to isolate the audio. The moment he hit play, the laptop crashed hard. The screen went black. But before it did, the speakers hissed with static, and one word broke through. Stay. The laptop never powered back on. Hours of footage, entire camera's worth, wiped clean as though they'd never existed. That's when it hit us. This house didn't just haunt people. It erased evidence. It wanted to keep its secrets buried, and us with them. Chapter 18, The Blood on the Stairs. It was around 2 a.m. when Kyle noticed it, a faint dark streak along the staircase, glistening faintly under his flashlight. At first, we thought it was water. The house was old, full of leaks and rot. But as we got closer, the smell hit, iron and something faintly sweet. Blood. It trailed down 3 steps before vanishing into the wood grain, like it had been absorbed. We checked everyone. No injuries. No cuts, no scrapes, nothing. Still, the line looked fresh, wet in spots. Our producer grabbed a swab kit to collect a sample, but before she could touch it, the lights flickered once, twice, then blew out completely. We were left in total darkness. Then, from upstairs, the faint creak of floorboards. Slow, heavy, moving toward the top of the staircase. Kyle swung his flashlight upward. For a split second, we saw it. A figure crouched low on the top step, not standing, crawling, eyes catching the beam, reflecting white for an instant before vanishing into the shadows. The smell of iron grew stronger. When the lights returned, the trail of blood was gone. Every drop. Only a single handprint remained, smeared across the banister, small, child-sized. The same shape we'd seen in the thermal scan hours before. Chapter 19. The hidden room behind the fireplace. The blood trail had vanished, but something about the parlor still felt wrong. The air was heavier here, almost humming. Kyle walked over to the old brick fireplace, sweeping his EMF reader along the wall. It spiked instantly, full red. That's impossible, he muttered. The chimney shouldn't have been active, not after decades of disuse. He tapped the wall, hollow. We began clearing debris from the hearth. Underneath the soot and brick dust, a faint outline appeared. A door-shaped seam, bricked over long ago. Someone had tried very hard to seal it shut. It took an hour of chipping before a section finally gave way. Behind the bricks was darkness, deeper than the rest of the house, and colder. The smell of earth poured out, thick and stale. When we shone our lights inside, we saw it. A small room barely big enough to stand in, walls covered in old children's drawings. Stick figures, houses, suns, and always the same woman beside them. Eliza. On the floor sat a tiny wooden chair, facing the wall. A name carved into the seat, Annabelle. And above it, painted in something brown that might have once been red, the words, "She stays with me." The EMF reader screamed, lights flashing uncontrollably. Then the door behind us slammed shut. Chapter 20. The door that wouldn't open. The moment the hidden door slammed behind us, the air changed. The sound echoed too long, as if the walls themselves were swallowing it. Kyle lunged for the handle. It wouldn't budge. The latch didn't even rattle. He pulled harder, then slammed his shoulder into it. Nothing. It was as if the wood had fused with the frame. The temperature plummeted. Breath clouded in front of our faces. Our lights began to dim one by one, like something was draining their power. We shouted for the others. No reply. The radios hissed with static, a faint childlike giggle slipping through the noise. Then, in the beam of Kyle's flickering flashlight, something moved in the corner. A shape, small, slight, barely visible. It looked like a little girl sitting in that wooden chair. Only now, her head was slowly turning toward us. The camera caught the reflection of her face in the cracked mirror on the wall. Pale, empty eyes staring back. We pounded the door again. Nothing. And then a voice, soft and close. She said, "You'd come." The flashlight died. For a full 5 seconds, there was only the sound of breathing, not ours, from somewhere right between us. Then the door suddenly burst open on its own, and we didn't wait to ask why. Chapter 21. The markings on the walls. We stumbled out of the hidden room, gasping for air, our lights shaking across the soot-blackened walls. That's when we saw them. Markings we hadn't noticed before. Symbols. Words. Scratches that weren't there earlier. They ran the length of the hallway, gouged deep into the plaster, some in looping circles, others in jagged, desperate lines. It wasn't paint. It was burn-in. Kyle brushed a hand across one of the symbols and recoiled. "It's warm," he whispered. The camera zoomed in on one phrase repeated over and over again. "Keep her here." Our producer's voice trembled. "She's talking about Annabelle." As we followed the trail of words, they grew darker, denser, as if someone had carved them during a fire. Then, near the landing, they suddenly stopped, replaced by a series of small handprints pressed into the wall, the same ones we'd seen smeared in dust downstairs. The EMF reader flared again, lights pulsing faster than we'd ever seen. The walls seemed to vibrate under our hands, the markings almost shimmering. Then the house groaned, a long, deep sound that rattled every window. We looked up. A new message had appeared right above us, scorched into the ceiling plaster as if by invisible heat. "You shouldn't have come." The floorboards beneath us creaked, and something upstairs began to run. Chapter 22. The Chase. The sound exploded through the house. Pounding footsteps above us, fast and heavy, racing from one end of the second floor to the other. We froze for half a heartbeat, then instinct took over. Cameras up, flashlights swinging, we bolted for the stairs. The moment we reached the landing, the running stopped. Total silence. Only our ragged breathing and the faint ticking of that broken clock. Stuck again at 11:59. Kyle whispered, "Did you hear where it went?" Then came the answer from behind us. A door slammed open down the hall. A rush of cold air blasted through, scattering dust like smoke. Something moved in the shadows. Quick, too quick to track. We ran. Down the hall, through the parlor, tripping over cords and broken furniture. The footsteps followed, perfectly timed with ours, like an echo we couldn't shake. Every light flickered. Every camera glitched. The walls groaned with each step, like the house itself was breathing faster. We reached the front door, locked. It had been unlocked all night. Now, no matter how hard we pulled, it wouldn't move. Behind us, the piano struck one single note, sharp and deafening. Then another. Then the entire melody, playing at a manic pace as the footsteps thundered closer. It wasn't chasing us anymore. It was driving us back in. Chapter 23, The Breakout Attempt. Panic had taken over. The front door wouldn't budge, and every window we tried was either boarded shut or sealed by time itself. The air felt electric, thick with the hum of something unseen closing in. Kyle grabbed a chair and hurled it at a window. The glass shattered outward, but instead of a rush of cold night air, there was nothing. Nobody's. No sound. Just darkness, stretching beyond the frame like the house wasn't in the world anymore. The camera caught it, the shards falling in slow motion, then disappearing midair before they touched the ground. "Back door!" our producer yelled. We sprinted through the kitchen, but the door there had changed. It wasn't wood anymore. It looked like the same scorched plaster from the walls upstairs, with faint handprints pressed into it. Kyle pulled, kicked, screamed. The EMF reader on his vest went wild, beeping nonstop. Then came the whisper again, all around us this time, overlapping voices, dozens of them, hissing the same word over and over. "Stay." The lights burst. The room plunged into black. And from the window behind us, a small figure appeared, reflected in the broken glass. A little girl, watching, smiling faintly. We turned to face her, but the room was empty. Only the piano played, slow now, almost tender. Chapter 24, The Final Hour. It was 3 a.m., the so-called witching hour. Our gear was failing, batteries drained, cameras glitching into static. The only light came from our flashlights, each dimming in turn like the house was swallowing them one by one. We huddled in the parlor, trying to regroup. The temperature had dropped to 43 degrees. Every breath hung in the air like smoke. The piano sat silent now, the keys stained darker than before, as if something had seeped through them. Our producer whispered, "We have to end this. We need to give it back." She held out the locket. It was trembling in her hand. Kyle nodded, voice barely audible. The child's room. We climbed the stairs slowly, the boards groaning underfoot. At the top, the hallway was darker than ever. Our lights only reached a few feet ahead. The air pulsed with low, rhythmic vibrations, almost like a heartbeat. In the room, the little bed waited untouched. The small wooden chair still faced the wall. We placed the locket gently on the pillow. For a moment, nothing. Then a breeze, the first real breath of air we'd felt all night, swept through, carrying the faint sound of a lullaby. The same melody from the piano. The EMF reader fell silent. And for the first time in hours, the house went completely still. Chapter 25, The Aftermath. When we finally stepped outside, dawn was just beginning to break. The air felt heavier, yet somehow clearer, like the world had started breathing again. The house behind us loomed in the pale light, its windows dark, its silence complete. No voices, no footsteps, no piano. Kyle sank onto the front steps, face pale and drenched in sweat. "Did we stop it?" he asked, though none of us could answer. We checked the cameras. Most footage was static, whole sections erased as if the night had never happened. But one clip remained. In it, As we placed the locket on the pillow, the figure of a little girl appeared just behind us, not frightening, just watching. Her expression was almost peaceful. When the breeze came, she smiled. And then, she was gone. We turned back toward the house. In the daylight, the windows seemed different, cleaner, almost reflective. In one of them, just for a second, a small handprint appeared on the glass. Then it faded away. A few months later, we learned the house was demolished. Locals said the land refused to stay still. Workers' tools broke, and equipment stopped working near the foundation. The only thing that remained untouched, the piano, still sitting perfectly intact in the middle of an empty field. And sometimes when the wind passes through, you can still hear it play.